Welcome everybody back to the weekly forecast. I am Asher here along with Cody, Jackson, and Nathan, and today we're going to go over all the head coaching candidates that have been changed or fired or hired, all of that in today's episode. We're going to briefly go over the AFC and NFC championships since we did miss a week for that episode. Going to briefly cover it. We'll have our Super Bowl preview going on later on this week that you guys can totally tune into or watch however you watch us on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere else. But yeah, I guess we could start out with the Broncos losing to the Patriots. 13-10, I think was the score of that game.
And
And
seven.
7.
10-7
10-7.
ended up in a very snowy game halfway through the end of the third quarter and all the way in the fourth quarter. Pretty ugly game offensively from both teams. What do you guys kind of take away from that, just real quick?
I think the weather played a big factor, would be one of my main takeaways. Jared Stidham, I hate him. He gave me a lot of hope. He came out pretty hot, and I was like, wow, maybe this is the time. And it was just not to be. The Patriots defense is very, very elite. And I think not being able to sustain anything on the ground really hurt us. I don't know if having J.K. Dobbins being able to play in that game would have really changed anything, since that's kind of our primary back, and he was playing really, really well before he went down with an injury. But I think the main takeaway is just like, in the moment, I was okay with it. Sean Payton went for it on 4th and 1 from, like, the Denver, probably, like, 33-yard line, I think it was, instead of opting for some points. He called a play action pass on 4th and 1, and, Stidham basically, the offensive line crumbled, and Stidham had to throw it away. Um, I wasn't mad at it in the moment, but in hindsight, Denver had been predicting a potential pop-up blizzard for the last 72 hours during that exact time frame of the second half of the Broncos game. So, if you're Sean Payton and your defense was doing what it was doing, and you knew that snow probably could come in the second half, you take the points when you have a backup quarterback, and you live to see another day. So I was pretty frustrated with that decision. And I mean, props to the Patriots. Way they played more efficiently, I would say. They made the plays when they had to. I don't really think their offense did anything. They just had less timely errors. And their defense is just really, really good. I wish it was Bo Nix versus Drake May in the AFC Championship, because I just think that, that would have been a fun matchup to watch. But no, I'm not too mad about it after watching the NFC Championship game. I'll kind of get into it during our Super Bowl preview, and after we talk about the Rams Seahawks. But I just don't really see any realistic world where whoever won the AFC Championship was going to have a chance against the NFC. Whoever, even if it was Los Angeles or Seattle. I didn't think that either AFC team was going to have a chance. But yeah, I've kind of simmered down. I'm kind of over it, and I'm thankful for the season that the Broncos had.
Yeah.
I am too. Thought Jared Stidham came out hot until whatever the fuck his backwards pass or whatever you want to call it. Um, and then after that, we kind of just fell apart offensively. Just absolutely nothing was going. So, Patriots played good, or at least their defense played really good. It was a very slow offensive game for both sides. I really don't have much to say. Appreciate the Broncos giving me hope, though. So,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you can go ahead. Patriots fan.
Okay. All right. I mean, yeah, the game was rough. I think I saw a lot of people saying that, like, if Bo Nix plays that game, they blow out the Patriots. But I think that that's kind of, assuming that they play the same way if Bo Nix was playing. I think that we just kind of had the game plan of we were just gonna go up as much as we could and then just play not to lose, which I don't like doing. But obviously, it's kind of hard to do that in a blizzard. Our first half was really rough offensively. We had a couple plays here and there. I think that we were more efficient in our run game, which makes sense. And then when the second half happened, I mean, we knew what was going to happen. We knew that a blizzard was coming. So I think we cooked up like a 9.5 minute drive, and then from the time that drive ended to the rest of the game, we were just like, we're just going to do a few plays, make sure we don't turn the ball over, and not do it, which isn't fun football, but it just ensures us the win because we knew that Jarrett Stidham just couldn't do anything against our defense. And I think a lot of people had a lot of hope in Jarrett Stidham, but I was just kind of like, he hasn't played it all. It's kind of rough for him. RJ Harvey couldn't really let him breathe in terms of like they couldn't set up that run game against our run defense, and I think that helped us out. Not much to say. I wish it would have been a better game so that I could, confidently say that the Patriots played a great game. But I think it's going to be very different during the Super Bowl, just considering the conditions and stuff like that. But I'm always a fan of us going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I would say on the flip side, you had a pretty stinky, terrible first game, and then the game right after was down to the wire. It came down to basically the last drive of the game for the Seahawks. I mean, it's a completely different game. Your guys' game ended in 17 points, and there was 17 points scored in the second quarter alone in the Seahawks Rams game.
Yeah.
And obviously, as a Seahawks fan, I think that the Patriots defense is going to be better than the Rams defense that we played. So I'm not expecting it's going to be a shootout by any means, but I know that both offenses can still produce elite numbers as long as like takeaways aren't happening. And I think that was my big takeaway from the Seahawks game was I was surprised of how little turnovers we had in this game. And that ended up being the big swing factor in this game, I would say, is the turnover. Sam Darnold played almost a perfect game. And then you have Xavier Smith fumbling on that punt return that really set up the Seahawks to take that go-ahead touchdown, that lead later on into the game and kind of shift the momentum towards us in that kind of sense. But I would say Kenneth Walker for the Seahawks just this entire playoffs has emerged himself. That is my one takeaway that I will say is that if there's one player I really, really, really want to re-sign this offseason and keep, it's Kenneth Walker. I'm fine letting Woolen go after that play, after that, taunting call that he had or whatever. Stupid. We have to re-sign Kenneth Walker. I'll give him give him money. You can let Charbonnet walk or whatever. He's on an ACL tear. That's my number one thing is sign Walker and sign Shaheed. Our two most important players on offense was outside of JSN right now, I would say, that aren't already under contract.
Are they all on their last year of their contract?
Walker is, and then Shaheed is going to be a free agent after this season. And I think Charbonnet is going into his contract year, so I would think people want to re-sign him still. But he has a torn ACL, so he won't come back for a while.
Yeah, I think you guys should re-sign Walker and Shaheed. I think Shaheed's been like kind of that, X factor that you guys needed on your offense, just so that it's not all JSN.
I mean, and even just special teams in general. He's had multiple kick punt returns for touchdowns in crucial games this season, which just helps out a lot. I mean, I feel like people overlook special teams, but I think this season alone is like, since the Seahawks have such a good special teams, I'm noticing it more in these games. It matters a lot more than people really do think. Like being able to completely flip the field with a good punter or having a kicker that can kick 60-yard field goals and get you 3 points that could eventually turn the tide in those games. Like, I'm not saying obviously the Broncos kicker didn't he didn't just miss the field goal, got tipped later in that game, but like you make like hard field goals like that and it'll just keep you in games the entire time. Like Seahawks won a game off of 6 field goals this year. Like that's just how important special teams really is nowadays in 2025 and 2026. So definitely keeping our star special teams player is what we need to do.
I think that's also something that's frustrating about the Broncos season and kind of the way that it went. Like you see the other 3 teams that were in the conference championships, like the Patriots. I'm not saying necessarily that Stephon Diggs is the same wide receiver one that Stephon Diggs, was back in his prime. But there was enough talent around Stephon Diggs to where, like, right, Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, even Hunter Henry, like the Patriots wide receiver core is just loaded with complementary talent around it. And it's like same thing with the Rams. They had Devontae Adams and Puka Nakua, 2 studs at wide receivers, even though I know Devontae Adams is a little bit older now. And then you look at the Seahawks and it's like, they saw they only really had JSN. They go out and make a splash for Shaheed, and it ended up only costing you guys what, a third and a fifth round pick?
Yeah. Fourth
And
or
it's
fifth, something
like,
like that.
why? And it's like, you look at the Broncos in the playoffs, and it's like Jared Stidham was throwing to Cortland Sutton and Lil Jordan Humphrey. And it's like, you look at that and you're like, you look at the other three teams and you're like, if Denver would have just, actually made a push, like if if all New Orleans wanted was a third and a fifth for Shaheed, why did Sean Payton, why do you not immediately throw that offer in the direction of the Saints as well?
Why did
Or like
no other
even Jalen
team
Waddle. Yeah,
like?
like Waddle wanted out of Miami for a little bit, or at least there was some buzz going around there.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if he cost you a first round pick or not, but I mean, I feel like it's worth like you have to have talent at the receiver position in the playoffs because when your run game is not effective anymore and you're so heavily reliant on your run game setting up your passing game, and then your run game gets shut down, it's just a disaster recipe for the offense. And it was just really frustrating to see like everybody go and make splashes at skill positions on offense, and Denver just kind of sit there, knowing that they have a good little probably 3-year window currently to go and try and make a push, and they just sat there and did it. And I think if Denver doesn't go out this offseason and make some of those intentional moves to get a better wide receiver core, to get a better tight end, whatever it may be. We're going to continue to pay for it. I don't know that there's going to like that window to win a Super Bowl is going to drastically close because Mahomes is probably going to be back. Josh Allen's going to probably be back. Lamar Jackson will probably be back. Like all these teams are going to eventually be back to where they were. And it's like if you don't have an offense that can at least put up, 25 points in the playoffs, then you're
consistently.
kind of at a, yeah, you know.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
would say that's what got me most frustrated.
I agree. I would say my last thing before we move on to this head coaching stuff is that I think if you're a team and you know that you are contending for, you're going to be in the playoffs or you're going to be a contending team. I feel like at the trade deadline, we knew the Patriots were a contending team, at least, or somewhat going to be in the playoffs. The Broncos are going to be in the playoffs at some point, or at least, and same with the Seahawks. Why you need to make a trade at the deadline to push yourself over the edge? I don't care how much. Like, winning a Super Bowl, if it costs you 2 first round picks, but you win a Super Bowl, that's so worth it. Now, yes, I guess you do have like in hindsight, if you do lose, then it's like you lose those picks or whatever it is. But like when it comes to Shaheed and you're losing a fourth and a fifth round pick for him or whatever the trade was, like that's not saying it's nothing because every pick matters in the NFL at the end of the day. But like if that's the thing that's going to determine whether you guys go over the edge for Super Bowl favorites or to increase your team by like the need that it needs to be, that's completely worth it, and you should be aggressive at the deadline if you are one of these contending teams.
Yeah. I know the
I agree.
Patriots were almost thinking
I
about
agree.
getting Miles Garrett, but they were asking for like 3 first round picks.
Yeah,
We're like, we're not doing that.
yeah,
But we didn't really have that many issues. But I think like we don't have, a superstar wide receiver. But I think like you said, like just having complementary receivers that can do a bunch of different things. Like Kayshawn Booty can just get you a 40-yard, completion. Stephon Diggs can get you a first down. Mac Hollins can jump over any defender and get what they want. And I think that that's what we did in the offseason, I think is the one of the main factors in our success. And I think
yeah,
that a lot of teams are just kind of afraid to go out and spend all their money on a bunch of players. But like if you know what you need and you see the players that you can get, I think you just do it.
yeah.
And I think that Sean Payton should, I think that you guys would have to make a splash on like a wide receiver here soon.
It's
Like
because
even like a Jettas.
it's because they think their job is on the line and they make one bad decision in the NFL. You have a 1 to 2 year window, and if you don't do good in 1 to 2 years, you're basically gone. And they're afraid that they don't want to take that risk. But
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing with the Broncos is like that's a Walmart money.
yeah,
Like those guys come out in press conference all the time and they legit say like we have full trust in our general manager and Sean Payton. Like that's why we brought them here to, make those decisions. Like we're not necessarily involved in the football making decisions, right? We delegate that to the GM and the head coach, and it's like, okay, you go and you trade Justin Jeff, or in some crazy hypothetical, the Broncos end up with Justin Jefferson this year, something like that, and they still don't make it to the Super Bowl. I don't think the Walmart people are like, well, gotta fire Sean Payton.
Yeah.
That didn't work out. Like,
Yeah.
no, I think they're like, you know what? We got Justin Jefferson. Now we're gonna have him for a full year, and we're gonna run it back, and everything's gonna like work out. Like, I think that's the mindset that they would have, and I think if you're a good team or you're a coach that has had sustained success in a certain spot for a long period of time, I think you have every right to tell your general manager to be aggressive and to go make a move, and vice versa. Now, if you're a first or second year head coach, I do understand it a little bit, right? You don't want to make a wrong choice and then it end up backfiring when you're having a little bit of success. But if you're proven and your team, you feel like you have a window to go and win, you have to be aggressive. I don't care what team you are.
Yeah.
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 And I mean, Vrabel knew he was like, unless we go 0-17, I'm keeping my job.
Yeah.
So I'm just going
Yeah.
to get everybody, which
Which
is
is
what you should
what
do.
you should do. Yeah. Well, we can get into the coaching candidate hirings. We're just going to go in alphabetical order. We're not going to go in. Um, we're going to alphabetical order of teams that happen. So we're going to start with the Cardinals hiring Mike LaFleur, brother of Matt LaFleur, the Packers head coach. And we have another brother set duo in the league. He was previously the Rams OC. I think it's a good hiring for the Cardinals. Just because of we've seen the success that he had with the Rams this season, with Puka, with Devontae Adams when he was healthy, and Stafford being the MVP candidate, um, and all that. And I understand now he's under the McVay tree, so he's basically automatically going to be. I feel like he's going to be somewhat successful just because it's under that tree. But yeah, what is your guys' opinion on that?
I think
I
it's a
think
good
I think it'll
hire.
be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'll help Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot because if you saw under the Rams, they produced Cooper Cup and then produced Puka and Devontae. I mean, not produced Devontae, but produced Puka. And I think that would probably help Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot. Try to get him the ball more, and I think that would be good for the Cardinals.
Yeah. He
Well, I
was
mean, they didn't.
also. Go ahead.
Like they didn't produce Devontae, but considering how he was the last couple years, the fact that he was able to be as productive as he was, I
Yeah.
think was big on Mike LaFleur. It just I don't know if they're gonna stick with Kyler or if they're gonna go a different route, if they're gonna like draft a quarterback.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
excited to see what they do with him, honestly.
I I think if you're the Cardinals, you have to run it back with Kyler, and
I agree.
that's I think that's strictly based on this quarterback class and the draft position that they're in. I really don't think outside of Mendoza, which I'm even not like the most high on Mendoza. I think if he goes into the right system, right, he can be a good fit, and I do think he'll be all right with the Raiders. But like outside of him in this class, I guess your quarterback two is probably who? Ty Simpson.
Yeah, and
yeah,
he's projected to go in the second round.
So it's
Yeah.
like I just don't think I think if you're the Cardinals, you look at that and you're like, okay, if we were to spend a draft pick on a quarterback and it is Ty Simpson, do we think Ty Simpson is better than Kyler Murray? And I'm not exactly the biggest Kyler Murray fan myself. Like I think there's a lot of potential there, and he's just I mean, I know he's been hurt by injuries a lot in his career, and he's had the work ethic issue as well. Um, I do think something can be unlocked there. I just worry that if he can't play a full season or if he doesn't become serious about football, you kind of have to determine that. And, you know, even if it is something where it's like, you know what, it's not going to be Kyler, we're just going to run a year of Jacoby Brissett. You know, maybe that's what they do.
He was low key balling
Um,
too.
yeah, I'm not really sure. I think the LaFleur hire is good. You know, I'm a big if you come from the Sean McVay or the Kyle Shanahan or
Which
the LaFleur tree,
he's also coached
um,
under Shanahan as well previously in his career as well.
yeah.
So he's under
Well,
both
pretty
the
much all these
trees.
pretty much these West Coast guys are just, you know, Mike Shanahan tree
Yeah.
guys. Like McVay has his own twists, but for the most part, it all comes from the Shanahan tree.
Yeah.
I do like, I'm a big, if you're hiring a new coach, I am in favor of going for an offensive minded coach over a defensive minded coach because I think there is more flaws that can be covered up defensively than there are offensively. So I think, you know, in today's game when offense is, you know, at its most crucial, um, right now in terms of success, like getting an offensive guy is the right choice. Um, I think it will be interesting just because he's young and respect. I mean, the Cardinals job isn't bad. Let me be clear. But in terms of like, you have to be an elite head coach right away because you are in a division with the Seahawks, the Rams, and the Niners. Like that is just
Yeah.
brutal to be coaching
Mm.
in.
Yeah.
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 And I mean, it like what was I gonna say? You're saying that you liked offensive minded head coaches more, which I can agree with long term, but I think a defensive minded head coach along with a great offensive coordinator, I think gets you the most success. Like, with Mike McDonald and Clint Kubiak,
Yeah.
or, Mike Vrabel and what's his nuts, Josh McDaniels. I think that you see that a lot. But then
I just
obviously
think
you end up losing
offensive
your receiver.
coordinators become in much higher demand than defensive coordinators.
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
like, even if you do hire a defensive minded guy, you have to trust that if his offensive coordinator gets poached in a year, that he's going to be able to make the right hire again to continue to supplement the team that he created. Because it's like, I mean, we've seen, gosh, I'm trying to think of an example right now where it's been, a defensive minded coach has lost. I mean, I, they were still all right, but I mean, you look at Dan Campbell without Ben Johnson this year, and it's kind of like, well,
Yep.
he wasn't as good. I mean,
And then
Does
look at Ben Johnson.
does
yeah,
Sirianni call defensive plays?
no, he's an offensive. Nick Sirianni's just trash. There's there, there's no ifs, ands, or buts there, really. I mean, I think situational football wise, like when he has to make decisions, I think he's a pretty like intelligent individual.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to timeouts and game management, but I think I I just don't think he's very good at actually offensive play calling, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with. They hired Sean Mannion, right? Is that who it was?
Who, the Eagles?
The Eagles as their offensive coordinator. They
I don't
hired
know.
some former quarterback. I can't think of his name.
Let me
I think
look.
it was Sean Mannion. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, Sean Mannion.
Um, so it's like, I mean, I don't know. I think Sirianni is very reliant on his coordinator. So if that offensive coordinator hire ends up, working out, then I think he'll continue to keep his job for a while.
Yeah.
But if not, I think he's got one more year.
I mean, he won the Super Bowl, so it's like you kind of have to keep him for however long. It sucks for the Eagles because they've had so many offensive coordinators in recent years that just you produce the top level offense and then the head coach gets or the offensive coordinator just gets poached. Kellen Moore
Yeah.
got poached. Like he's over there with the Saints, and I don't know how they're gonna do, but just all those. Who was the other offensive coordinator? They had oh my gosh, the Colts head coach right now. I'm blanking on his name.
Steichen.
Steichen, where they was their OC
Dave
for a
Steichen.
bit. Um, was KOC part of the Eagles head coaching?
Mm, I thought he was a McVay disciple.
Oh, he was. Yeah, he was a McVay disciple. Okay, but yeah, still like that's just how it is, unfortunately. But yeah, I would say Mike LaFleur is pretty good, but I mean they won't fire him after his first year, even if it is a disaster, just because he is so young. I feel like, and that team's already kind of. I mean, they have the third overall pick this year, so and they have a young
Yeah.
roster.
They
So
just feel a little bit disorganized. So it'll be
yeah,
interesting to see if he's able to kind of rally that and bring it all together and whatnot.
yeah. The next head coach I feel like is a lot of people are very very high on. The Ravens hiring Jesse Minter from LA. I know Jackson thinks that's your favorite head coaching hire.
Yeah, that is my favorite head coaching hire.
I don't think that's crazy. I mean, he also got
I think you
Declan
just have
Doyle
to,
as well, the
yeah.
youngest OC. He's like what 28 years old, and he's their OC now in Chicago from Chicago. And yeah, I like Minter as well. I think that's great for them. Another defensive
I mean,
guy.
you just have to look at like the Chargers' body of work since he got there on defense. It's like they were pretty below average in every single major statistical category. He shows and they're on it like they're a top five defensive unit in the NFL.
Yeah.
Um, Harbaugh speaks incredibly highly of him. He reminds me of he reminds me of Mike McDonald, to be honest
Yeah,
with you. And I think if he can nail his offensive coordinator hire, which is, if what was his name?
Declan Doyle.
Yeah, if Declan Doyle turns out to be good, then I think Minter is going to be in Baltimore for a long time. He strikes me as a guy who's going to basically be the opposite of Harbaugh. Like
Yeah.
he's going to be aggressive on fourth down. He is going to be, he's going to allow more out of structure things for Lamar, I feel like. I think he's going to be a much better motivator of men. I feel like I know he's young, but I feel like with Harbaugh, he had just been in the building for so long that it was just kind of one of those things where people were getting tired of him. People were getting tired of his coaching um, strategy and just kind of his overall persona as a coach. I know Baltimore fans had wanted Harbaugh gone for like 2 or 3 years before he actually, got fired this year. So I'm really excited to see what Minter can do in Baltimore. I think that's a great landing spot for him because, that team has a bunch of talent on it, and he's going to be able to coach that defense up, which is already it was a decent unit. I wouldn't say it was great by any means, but he's got players over there to make them an elite unit.
They were
And then,
injured
I
a
mean,
lot.
like we were talking about, yeah, I mean, if they can stay healthy, and if Declan Doyle turns out to be a really good offensive coordinator, I think Baltimore is going to be a really, really good team next year.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
to
Yeah, I
agree
agree.
with that. I mean, he in his first year with LA, he had the number one scoring defense in the league. This year, he has the number five scoring defense in the league. Statistically, top five in total defense for a lot of things. He was already an assistant for the Ravens a couple years ago before he went to Michigan. So he's already, you know, in the Baltimore kind of culture, I guess you could say. You already have the star quarterback. You still have Derrick Henry, who is still crazily like in his prime still for somehow. You have like great players on defense like Kyle Hamilton you can build around. Um, yeah, like you said, like this is probably I would say between this and I would probably say the Bills. I know they hired in house, but out of all the other landing spots, this is probably the best one you could have gone to, in my opinion, is the Ravens, just because of what they have already surrounding them. So,
Yeah.
but the
I think I
next, oh, go
think
ahead.
I think the biggest thing for the draft for the Ravens would be a wide receiver. They could like not have Zay Flowers as their number one. I feel like that team is dangerous.
Yeah, it just sucks. Is every single year that we always say the same thing for the Ravens is to draft a receiver, and then they end up either not drafting one or drafting a mid, really scrawny wide receiver. But
And I mean, I think that's the thing with like hiring mentors. Like
yeah,
Harbaugh was never a big wide receiver drafter. Like he just, that's not something that he prioritized. And I think mentor is going to be much more of a player's coach and just kind of be like, Lamar, what do you want? What do you
yeah,
need? And he's going to, tell the GM, like, this is what we need to do. This is right. You hired me in here to change the culture. You hired me to win you games. This is what I'm asking you to do. And, you have to believe in the process that I have for this team.
yeah, exactly. Next head coach. I don't really know how everyone else is thinking about this. Joe Brady got promoted in house to be the Bills head coach. Now I know a lot if you're a Bills fan, probably not excited about this because there are probably a lot of other better head coaching candidates. I mean, you could have had Kubiak in there. You could have had. I think this is before Mike LaFleur got hired as well. I think I would rather have him than Joe Brady. I mean, the GM
I
kind of said
believe
that they wanted a kind of a culture change, or at least Buffalo in general wanted a culture change. And then you hire in house, and that's it. You don't really get rid of anybody else in there except for McDermott. Go ahead, Nathan.
yeah. I'm pretty sure this was before Mike McDaniels also got hired to LA.
Yeah. Which I mean that's big for LA. We could talk about that later as well.
Yeah.
But I mean the thing with Brady is like yes, he has had successful offenses in Buffalo with Josh Allen. I just think that if you already have the star quarterback, you probably don't need the offensive guy to be the head coach, and you need to focus more on that defense. Obviously, I think this season, you know, you could say that the season fell short because of Josh Allen having all those turnovers. But in multiple seasons before that, it fell on McDermott. I mean, you're letting the Chiefs run up, get that field goal in 13 seconds on you multiple times that Josh Allen has led that team to AFC divisional, AFC championship game, and the defense is the one that's fallen short. So I think it was right for McDermott to go. I just think that they got the wrong guy as the hiring. I think that they were like too stressed out that they couldn't get Minter because he was already gone, and you just couldn't get Stefanski, you just couldn't get Harbaugh. So you just kind of just like were scared and you just hired in house.
Yeah. And I think I mean I don't mind it just because, he's already familiar with the system. Not much would change on that front. Um, it's just a matter of I think a lot of the Bills' issues comes from the management side of things rather than and I guess defensively. I could see this going from Joe Brady actually doing good and elevating it to the point where Josh Allen actually has something to work with. Or I could also see it going similar to like Gerard Mayo, where they like hire in house and it ends up being a horrible decision.
Yeah. I mean, you saw all the stuff that came out with all that Keon Coleman stuff where like the GM was like
Yeah.
completely dogging on Keon Coleman and saying that, McDermott wanted him and blah 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 and I that's just so like toxic to have in an organization. Like if I was a player for like I
Mhm.
feel bad for Keon Coleman. He's in like his second year right now. And it's like
Yeah.
you're expecting him to be some like crazy good superstar. You drafted him in the second round. So it's just like
I I actually don't think there is. I don't think they're expecting Keon Coleman to be a superstar. I think it's more so like Keon Coleman's immaturity is
yeah,
out of. I mean, he was a healthy scratch multiple times this year. I don't think it's a talent issue. I don't think he's the most talented guy in the world, but I don't believe that um, it's strictly a because they don't feel like he's talented enough. I think he hasn't figured it out yet. He hasn't figured out how to be an adult.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. Which
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the healthy scratch some of those games is also just because like the McDermott didn't want him on the field. The whole team just didn't want him on the field, which is like kind of crazy to do. But I mean, if his actions were immature or whatnot, and he was like being um just like not listening to anybody and being just like a bad kind of player, I could totally see that. But still, I mean, I just think it was a very toxic kind of organization that we're kind of looking at now, especially with the GM kind of deflecting all this blame from him to McDermott, and then you just got rid of McDermott as well. So
Yeah, I have a lot more issue with the management still being in place than I do with the hire. I do think the Joe Brady hire is more on the side of Gerard Mayo than it is,
Yeah.
he's going to come in and elevate the Bills to
yeah,
their full potential. I'm going to be rooting for the guy. I root for most new hires unless they left the Broncos with bad blood. But I hope he does well and I hope he finds success because I do like Josh Allen and I do hope that Josh Allen can one day have a Super Bowl appearance or a ring. But I just think in terms of if you look at the other hires in the cycle, I don't think it was the worst, but I definitely don't think by any means that they made like a top 5
yeah,
higher of the cycle. Like I'd probably put them in that 7 range, 7 or 8 range, in terms of where I like him in regards to the other hires.
I agree. I agree. I like all the other hires. I like a
Yeah.
lot of the other hires more. Like I'd rather take. If you're gonna get an offensive head coach, you couldn't have waited for Kubiak. Like
Yeah.
Kubiak would have
You think
way
he would have
rather
gone
had the
there?
Bills.
Yeah.
If I'm Kubiak, I would rather have Josh Allen than anybody
James
else
Cook.
than and James Cook than anybody else like in the cycle. Event like yeah, he's going to the Raiders and you have T and you have Bowers and you have the first overall pick where you're most likely going to pick Mendoza and you can kind of build your offensive structure around that. But like I'm not giving up a generational quarterback and a top 5 running back in the league right now for that. But I mean, they hired him
Yeah.
before Kubiak even. I don't even know if Kubiak even interviewed with them. So,
Mhm.
I don't think so.
I
so
don't think very many teams or they interviewed very many people.
they interviewed Philip Rivers. Like they're interviewing Philip Rivers over Kubiak is
Yeah, that's just
insane.
such a
Like
that's
that's
such a
terrible.
troll.
There's like no
Yeah.
way.
I think they interviewed 8 people and 3 of them pulled out, and then they just fumbled and
Yeah.
hired or promoted Joe Brady. So
I mean, I'm going to talk about the next. I think this is the worst head coaching candidate. That I think got hired this, and it's Todd Monken to the Cleveland Browns. I think the Browns were um they wanted to keep Jim Schwartz so badly, and then so they kind of, this is how I'm looking at it from like the Browns perspective. They want to keep Jim Schwartz. You had an elite defense with him under there. You have the young core, and you have Myles Garrett, and you want to keep him still. But you still want to get a new head coach, and you don't want to promote him, but you still want to keep Jim Schwartz. So it's like you have, when you're going through all these head coaching like hirings and everything else, you're like, are you willing to keep Schwartz, or do you want to bring in your entire unit yourself? And I think that Munkin was the only person who was like, all right, I'll keep Jim Schwartz on our team. And then Jim Schwartz goes and says, bro, you didn't hire me as your head coach. I'm out. And then they lose him. So now you're stuck with Todd Munkin as your head coach. And what are you going to do now? You're not going to do anything. Like, Munkin does not speak anything good to me at all as a head coach.
Where is he
I
coming from?
mean,
He was the Ravens.
he's the OC in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And I would exactly call the Ravens offense
Good.
elite by any means.
Oh, I mean, you have
I would-
Lamar and you have
really
Henry, and
good.
you still didn't like produce a top 5 offense for half of the years that you were
He-
OC.
He was good though his first 2 years in Baltimore.
Yes.
Like I will give him that, and he was good at Georgia as well. Like in his defense, he does have at least a little bit of a track record in terms of developing a good offense. I just think if you're the Cleveland Browns, knowing what you know, if you were going to hire Todd Monken, why did you fire Stefanski? Like that just seems like,
Yeah.
organizational mismanagement. It's like you hired a lesser Stefanski, in my opinion. And it's just like I don't think it inspires like any excitement in the Browns organization, which is another thing. It's like if you want to get fans, which I know Cleveland has a really dedicated fan base and, they'll still show up for the games and whatnot. But if you want to get fans excited and you want to get, the city buzzing again, I just don't feel like Todd Monken is the hire that you make. You try and you make a more splashy, maybe a younger offensive coordinator or a younger defensive coordinator who is one of the hotter names in the cycle. And you try and you go and get him. But maybe Monken will be able to develop Shador into something that is, a consistent starter in the NFL, and that's what they saw in him. But if not, I don't know. Really uninspiring in my opinion.
I mean,
I agree.
I agree. I mean, I feel like you need a culture guy in Cleveland. That's you want. If I'm looking at Cleveland, I want a young culture guy. Build up this young roster. You have Myles Garrett, the best defender on the planet right now, and you're gonna go and hire this mid offensive play calling guy. He was already the offensive coordinator for the Browns 1 year. Went for 1 year and got fired immediately. Went back to the college scene, and you want him back. And you're downgrading, like you said. You had Stefanski, who, I'm sorry, the Browns like offensive situation this year was the worst ever. You have no good receiver. You have Harold Fannin and Njoku, which was good. Judkins was decent, but you had no offensive line behind it. And you were stuck with Shador, Joe Flacco, and Dylan Gabriel as your quarterbacks. And now you have Munkin coming into the exact same situation here. And I don't know what you're really going to expect from that. Um, So it's just really weird of why they're hiring Munkin over a lot of these other guys. I would much rather hire a defensive coordinator and then get Munkin as my OC if I'm anything. But
Yeah.
instead they went with Munkin, which I don't know. I don't understand that either. But
Maybe it'll work out for him. I mean, if they can, they did have a really good draft this year, in my
yeah,
opinion, and I think they've had a good draft the past 2, 3 years. So hopefully, once that talent kind of gets more comfortable at the NFL level, maybe something can get built off of that. But I just think if you're talking in terms of culture and excitement in Cleveland, that's probably like the one guy on this list of head coaching hires that probably strikes me as like the least
yeah,
uh, exciting. That's not to say that he won't be good. I just don't really foresee how it's going to happen. I think Cleveland is kind of forever doomed currently in their situation. But yeah, I don't know.
yeah. It's just you're in Cleveland. You're going to suck no matter what. Unfortunately, it's just how you are. You've had, the last time you were really relevant was with Baker back in, well, like 2021, 2018 or something
Hmm.
like that, or whatever it was. I mean, it's just rough for them. Another really bad team that just hired, potentially expected, per the contract hasn't been signed yet. Clint Kubiak is supposed to be expected to be hired to the Las Vegas Raiders um, as their head coach from Seattle. I think personally, I think this is my second favorite hiring out of any of the head coaches this cycle. Just because of what we saw from Kubiak in Seattle, I think that he led to them to one of the most explosive offenses in the game. You had JSN as the best receiver in the game. You at the very end of the season, you got the run game starting to go with Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker going. You actually had a good offensive line for once in Seattle, which everyone thought coming in was going to be a bottom 10 unit, and now they ended up being a top 10 unit in pass protection and run blocking as well. He completely flipped that offense around. And I think you already have some of the key pieces on offense that you have. You already have a decent O line, nothing really crazy. Um, you have Ashton Genty, who at the end of the season was honestly looking pretty good. He was just overlooked because he was on the Raiders and they sucked. You have the top, arguably the best tight end with Brock Bowers. Um, and you kind of have, all these draft picks in your hands to choose from to build your offense around or just build that defense. And they're probably going to take Mendoza, so you already know what quarterback you got and what kind of offense you're going to run. And I think that he can completely flip that team around for a couple years. Now, obviously, you're playing the AFC West, which really sucks because I think he's the worst coach out of all of them in general because they have such elite coaches in that division already. But I still think in the future and in the long term, he's so young that he could be your head coach for the next 5, 6, or 7 more years just on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
KU legend Clint Kubiak.
Yeah, bro, had to go deep in his
Yeah.
bag for that. Former Broncos passing coordinator, I think he was.
I think so. Yeah, wide receivers coach at KU in 2015.
Let me look. I think I should look this up too,
So
that he was on the Broncos, which is
I,
crazy.
I do like the hire for the Raiders as well. I think he will bring some actual, organization to the franchise. I think that the Raiders offense, I think it's close. I think it needs definitely like two more really solid wide receivers, whether that be free agency or the draft, as well as maybe an offensive lineman or two. And then I think if you're Las Vegas, I mean, you have to hammer the defensive, you have to get that right. You have to get the talent in place there. Um, but no, I like Genty. I like Bowers. I like, a lot of the pieces that they already have. And I think just I think Pete Carroll is just a little bit in over his head. And, there's nothing wrong with that. Pete Carroll's going to be remembered as a great head coach. Like, I don't think people are going to take that Raiders season and just kind of throw it away as,
Yeah.
a wash. And, he wasn't ever a good coach in the NFL. But I do think Clint Kubiak coming in is a good hire for the Raiders. I think he's going to be able to get a lot of untapped potential and get a couple of extra things out of that roster that maybe Pete wasn't able to get. But yeah, I do like the hire as well, and I think that if it wasn't the AFC West, then maybe he was going to, let's say, the NFC South or a division like that, he'd be able to have success right away. But I do think it's going to be a year or two,
Yeah.
most likely with him being in the AFC West.
Yeah.
I agree. I really like that hire. I think he has the offensive pieces to start building an offense that could potentially have a chance at winning the West. But you also have to those coaches and teams that are already in the West are pretty difficult. But I do like this hire. I think it's probably one of the best hires in the coaching carousel. So
I think a lot of it's going to depend on how good Mendoza ends up being, if it actually like translates into the NFL.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like Mendoza doesn't scream like generational quarterback to me. Maybe I'm just, not a ball knower, but I don't know. He could be. It
I
just
think the
depends on.
physical traits are there. Like I think in terms of his size and like his arm talent, I just yeah, I do worry about like I think in any other draft class he's probably a late first rounder,
Yeah.
early second rounder. But I mean, I don't know. You give him the right system. I mean, you saw what he did with Indiana this year. I know it's different because it's college and NFL, and those are two entirely different jumps. But I do think he has at least something there that would be useful. And would allow the Raiders to have some success right away. But he definitely screams like just kind of an above average system guy for his career. And there's nothing wrong with that because if he wins and he gets the Raiders to the playoffs or, he gets an AFC West, title out of it, whatever it may be, then his career is a success, right? But I think, in terms of what his ceiling is, it's not as high as what some people may think it is.
Yeah, I mean,
Derek Carr really loves him. So
here's my thing with
he
Mendoza
said
is
on
like
the podcast.
I'm looking at Kubiak and I'm looking at what Kubiak had at Seattle versus what Kubiak has now in Vegas. Kubiak likes to run. I mean, at least a Seahawks fan, I know he likes to run a lot of two tight end personnel. And you have Michael Mayer and you have Bowers. They're gonna have that. I think Mendoza can be not play at the level of Sam Darnold, but be that Sam Darnold-esque quarterback of he can as long as he can manage the game as an above average quarterback, that's all Kubiak really needs from you. You can make these 10, 15-yard like reads down the field perfectly fine. You can hit a receiver over the middle on a crossing route I scheme up for you, perfect. Hit 1 to 2 deep shots down the field. That seems like what Mendoza can do. And then, you just rely on Genty as in that running game. I mean, I think Genty still has the potential to be, a top 10 running back in the league. I think he was just really unfortunate with the offensive line and the situation and the play calling that he was dealt with in LA to begin with. But yeah, like you said, Cody, like I know we talked about this in our group chat. Mendoza doesn't really scream out top 10 guy. Mendoza's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league. Like, I don't know if you just like when you watch like players, like you just realize that they have that it factor in them. And I don't like you look at them, you're like, oh, dude, you're going to be a star. Like I saw LSU, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. We all like watched that LSU national championship run that they had. We knew that both of them were going to be stars one day. Like Bijan Robinson at Texas, I knew that play, like that number 1 overall pick was going to pan out at some point in general. And it has. And it's like the same thing with Gibbs at Alabama. Like, but Mendoza, I don't see that. Like, I don't feel that he's going to be this guy in the NFL, if that makes any sense. But I mean, I still think Kubiak's got his guys with him. He'll probably go like 6-11 next year, honestly. Um, Better than what he did last year. There'll be some nice gritty games in there, I would say. I don't know what their schedule looks like actually, but yeah, I mean, I think he'll do way better than what he did this year, but I like the hire.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh yeah, they have to play the AFC South 4th place, so the Titans. The AFC North 4th place, which was the Bengals. And then the NFC
Browns
South last place. Oh yeah, Browns. And then the NFC South last place. So Titans, Browns, and Saints. So easy enough for them. Next head coach. I wasn't inspired by this. I don't really know much about him. The Dolphins hired Jeff Hafley. I think he's one of the first head coaches to get hired in this kind of cycle that's going on right now. Don't really know much about him. I don't really watch Packers games. He was the Packers defensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. What are your guys' opinions on Hafley getting hired? I don't really know too much about him.
I think it could be a really good culture change, especially coming from Mike McDaniels and all the rumors you heard about players not going to player meetings and stuff like that. There's no punishments coming out, and I think that could be a really big culture change for the Dolphins. So
I
I honestly
think
like the hire.
that, yeah, I mean, go ahead, Cody. Sorry.
No, you're good. I like the hire. I mean, I've watched more Packers games, and I think when Micah was healthy, they had one of the best defensive units in the league. I think that if everything went well for them, I think that the Packers would have had a lot more success. Um, I don't know if the Dolphins hiring a defensive-minded head coach was the play, but I don't know. I think it's kind of middle ground in terms of the head coaching hire, but I think that if they can, you know, move on and get a good offensive coordinator and kind of shift that culture a little bit into something more defensive minded, it actually could work out for them. But I think that he was good in Green Bay, and I think that he could work out definitely.
They did get
Yeah, I kind of
go ahead.
I kind of agree with Nathan in his take in terms of from an organizational and a culture setting standpoint. Like I do think he's going to have a little bit more structure than what McDaniel had. I don't necessarily think that this was an elite hire by the Dolphins. If you go back to when he was a head coach at Boston College, he didn't have much success. I know that the Packers defense did. Get slightly better with him, but it wasn't like a big enough change, in my opinion, to necessarily justify him already being a head coach only 2 years into being a defensive coordinator in the NFL. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I think you'll see a lot more. Like, I do think Malik Willis will probably be the starting quarterback for the Dolphins next season. I think that's going to probably happen. Um, but yeah, I think from an actual leader standpoint, it was a good hire. I just in terms of X's and O's and kind of, putting a winning product on the field, I'm not sure what that's gonna really look like for him right off the bat.
Yeah, it sucks. You're in the AFC East. You're already gonna have the Bills and Patriots, who are already gonna be a hard team. Um, like you went 7-10. Like they were. Here's the thing with the Dolphins is that you have the key pieces on offense. You have Waddle if he stays. I don't know if Tyreek Hill's going to come back. It's looking like he's not going to come back in the end. But you have A-Chain, a top 5 running back in my eyes. You have Waddle, who's top 20 in my opinion. Um, you have some star key pieces on defense, but not really much. So maybe that's where he kind of comes in and he kind of gets his own guys and whatnot. Um, they just hired Bobby Slowick, the passing game coordinator for them, as their OC, which will be good. Which makes me think that they're going to get a pass heavy quarterback that they know that they can throw down field. So I don't think they're going to draft one. Like I saw, I think people saying Ty Simpson is going to get drafted by the Dolphins. Um, I don't think that'd be good for them. I think that they need an actual quarterback who can throw down the field, which I think Malik Willis can. But he definitely does like fit into their. I know he's not, McDaniels isn't in the system anymore, but he's still one of those fast, agile quarterbacks that can move around and be flashy and speedy like A-Chain and Waddle already are. So that could be a good trade. Or is he going to be a free agent, or do they have to trade for him for Willis?
I thought he was maybe gonna be a free agent, because
Thought
I
he was a
think
free agent.
yeah, because I think that's kind of why they were thinking that the transition to Miami would be so easy,
He is, yeah.
because they wouldn't have to trade for him. But yeah, he
Mhm.
is a free agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be. I mean, that'd be nice for the Dolphins. I think that it sucks they play in already a really tough division when you have the Patriots and uh, Buffalo, who had 12 and 14 wins this season. Um, but like, dude, Tua had 2,600 passing yards this season. Like it's terrible that, and it's crazy that they could have won these last 2 or 3 games at the end of the season, and they could have been 9-8 and had a positive record if you beat the Steelers and you beat the Bengals at the end of the season. But unfortunately, they didn't. Um, like they're just going to be a scrappy team no matter what, which good for them. But I'm not really moved. I'm not going to consider them a top team or a top hire now just because of Halfley. But they're definitely a couple years off. But I mean, it's the same. I'm going to say the exact same thing about the next head coaching hire, Mike McCarthy going to the Steelers. You just got a Mike Tomlin.
Offensive Mike Tomlin, pretty
You
much.
got the exact same guy.
Yep.
Like you're
Yep.
gonna have a positive record. You might make the playoff appearance. You might, go 8-9 potentially. But that's your ceiling. Like that's how McCarthy was even in Dallas.
For the
Like
Cowboys.
he wasn't terrible in Dallas. Like don't get me wrong, like he definitely did lead because he was there when he had Zeke and Dak at their rookie year. And I'm pretty sure. And I mean, they had one of the most explosive like rookie quarterback and running back seasons that we've ever seen. But like you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback right now, who he previously coached before, but you're not getting prime Packers Rodgers like he had when he won the Super Bowl. You have drama queen DK Metcalf, and you have a running back duo backfield with Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, and you have the most expensive defense in the league. So there's no real culture change going on in Pittsburgh, which sucks because I think that's what they definitely needed. They needed a younger guy to kind of reset their culture right now. And even if that does mean that you're going to be a bottom feeder team for 1 to 2 years, get your star players, get your star quarterback, and then maybe next year's draft, like Next year's draft is loaded with insanely good players. And if you wanted to be a bad team at any point right now in your franchise, it would be this upcoming season because this next year's draft class is probably going to be one of the best than from what we're looking at least. So, not inspired at all by this.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was. Sorry. You go ahead, Jackson.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment. I think it's just an offensive Mike Tomlin. I don't really think much changes for Pittsburgh. I think it was just one of those things where, I think Mike Tomlin had, kind of, I wouldn't say overextended his stay, but it was probably time for him to move on. It was time for a new face to be in the Steelers organization. And I think the Steelers owner really just hired, kind of with a comfortability aspect. He didn't want to try to make a run at a up and coming guy who, maybe has a lot of potential, but there's not a lot of knowns about him. And so I think he made the safe pick. And I don't think there's anything wrong with McCarthy. I think he'll be fine, but I don't think it's necessarily, a crazy franchise altering hire for the next, 10 years by any means.
Yeah.